Assalamu alaikum. You're listening to the New Beginnings podcast. No fluff, no holding back, just honest conversations about your journey as a new Muslim.
Brought to you by New Beginnings, a platform that aims to support new Muslims on their journey through Islam, from the Shahada and beyond.
I really love what you've said about being careful about what you're bringing into the new relationship as well. And off the back of that comment, I'd like to bring up a slightly different question here, a slightly different framing of this particular discussion around intimacy, because all of us are mature, mashallah. We've been discussing this as people who have been previously married, coming into subsequent marriages with that past where both partners have been previously married, both partners have previous experiences. What I see in my local community a lot is younger converts in their 20s, up to 30, early 30s, who have had experiences with physical intimacy and are marrying people in the heritage Muslim community who have not. So whether the convert is male or female, it doesn't matter. They are experienced people marrying people with zero experience. And we've got a few different things to discuss about this, about how to tackle this, because on the one hand, there's this idea that, well, when you embrace Islam, it deletes everything you've done in the past. It's done, it's gone, it never happened. You don't have to tell anybody about it. And yet here you are, 29 years old with a child. Oh, but my sins are forgiven. Okay, yes, your sins are forgiven, but there's actual physical evidence of that thing that you did. SubhanAllah, how do you negotiate that with a person without making them feel jealous about it, without making them feel some sort of a way about it? There's also the issue of the person who's from the background where they have never had any sort of experiences with relationships, feeling inadequate, feeling that they're going to be compared to the person's past partners and so on. And I think we find this especially amongst sisters who marry convert brothers. I hear this a lot from these sisters, that they are scared to death of being compared to their husband's exes. This isn't people who both of them have had pasts, whether through marriage or otherwise. This is young people. Only one of them has a past.
I'd say on the part of men, especially men, they need to have more emotional maturity when it comes to having these conversations and not label the other person and judge them. And I have to say frankly, if you're not emotionally ready and able to process your emotions, then I think you should make a different choice, because it's a tough choice to make. You need to understand what you're letting yourself quote unquote in for, not in a negative way, but what's in front of you, because there are some things that are real. Like you said, a child from someone else is a child, and that's a physical human being who deserves every respect and comfort and graciousness and compassion. Prophet ﷺ was compassionate towards children. Why should this be any different? It's exactly the same. So if you don't have that within you, then it isn't the right choice for you. And I say that in a strong way, because you'll not only be really troubling yourself, you'll be troubling other human beings as well. And I don't think it's a sense of integrity, personal integrity, if you don't do that. We have to be very cautious about how we not only carry ourselves, but how we affect other human beings. Because every human being is potentially our pathway to Jannah or otherwise, right? And we don't want anyone cursing us for the wrong reasons. We basically led them down a path that really destroyed them. And I speak in extreme terms because we hear these stories. People really become disillusioned with even marriage itself because of the experience they had with someone who happened to be a quote unquote practicing person. So really, it's not necessarily the practicing person is where your compatibility is. It's more, is this person? And we have 7 spokes we talk about, which really are to be explored when you're considering someone. And one of them is that the person needs to have empathy. And the other one is a person needs to be open-minded, meaning you can have a conversation with this person, they can see your point of view, and you can have a dialogue again. It's that key word, dialogue. If you can't have a dialogue with anyone and they close off this conversation, really, it's a no-brainer. It's not going anywhere.
I was going to say, we've heard about red flags and green flags when you're getting married. What's your red flags? And they're so different for every person. For me, a green flag was someone who had been divorced and had children, because I was not about to translate my life experience to someone who had no clue what having children and being divorced was like. So you have to know going into marriage, before you're married, whether you're man or woman, what is a red flag for me? And if you are going to expect someone to be anything different than who they are, that's going to be impossible. People cannot fake it. Okay. So if you know I'm a really jealous person, I need to be with somebody who just has never had a relationship physically, because it's going to be really difficult for me who I am and whatever it may be, you need to be able to communicate that to the person you're speaking with clearly, not implicitly, explicitly, and vice versa. If you're a woman or a man who's had experiences before, it's not about you divulging all the details. It's about saying a green flag for me is someone who has empathy, who sees my situation, isn't going to judge me and actually expect me to be someone different and erase my past, erase the child I had or erase the marriage I had or relationships I had before I came into faith. It's just not possible.
So what I'm garnering from the discussion, it's really important to just set your boundaries and your non-negotiables before actually, going any further in the marriage or before the marriage. Some people, they're already emotionally involved with a partner before converting to Islam, and some of them they because of their relationship with a Muslim spouse, they also decide to convert to Islam. Obviously, we don't know how sincere they are, and people are at different levels. But what are the benefits and drawbacks about that, and how should a person approach that? So they fall in love, and they might find their religion is great, and now they're going to become Muslim, and part of it might be because of the spouse, but part of it is also, I do believe in Islam, and maybe it's something they just want to try out and see how it works. So I just, wanted to get your thoughts around that, because it is quite common, as we're seeing.
Yeah, so if I've understood your question properly, one of the main things I would say that we always, always, always need to be true to ourselves without any doubt whatsoever. For every single human being, I need to be true to myself, who I am, what's good for me, and what's not good for me. I think the difficulty that we have, oftentimes we adopt a persona that tries to fit the other person, especially when we really like the person, if we're, like you said, emotionally attached to them. And what can happen is quite quickly we can go into trying to rationalize things, confirmation bias. Our brain will actually look for evidence to confirm our bias that we have in the first place anyway. So we will ignore things, the obvious things as well. So whilst we would maybe driven to marry someone who has a particular faith because we really like this person, and they happen to be a Muslim or a person who has faith, and we do that within ourselves, we're really troubled. I think we need to be honest with ourselves and put the cards on the table and say, absolutely everything else is fine, but this is the thing that's really troubling me. And that person has every right and autonomy to say, I'm not sure what's going to happen in the future, whether I become a Muslim or not. I'm not sure, and I can't guarantee you. And the other person has to really listen to that and accept it, that she may never become a Muslim as well. And is that okay with me, right? I cannot coerce this person to become someone that they're not ready to become. And these are really important questions to ask. Yeah, you're emotionally attached because you want the best for them. You want them to be guided and have this beautiful faith, but perhaps not ready right now. So being honest with ourselves is the most important thing. So whilst at the start it might be a beautiful thing, or we might have this romantic notion that, everything will be okay, it might not be, because it might be things that trouble you afterwards, after being married, after the 69% of things begin to hit the proverbial fan, and everything's all over the place. And you're thinking, what happened here? And therefore, you can, in some ways, build resentment within yourself because you're a bit disillusioned about what happened and your expectations weren't met entirely. And that's human nature. We won't have all our expectations met.
And I think this is important, resentment on both sides, for the convert and for the heritage Muslim. So it's not just on one side, we've seen it on both. And I think it's really important to know that your faith must be your own. You can be inspired by love. And as Amanda and Bilal and I we were all talking before we started this podcast, we were saying, we come to this faith usually inspired by someone. Maybe it's not a relationship. Maybe it's a friend. Maybe it's someone in the community. Maybe it could be anything. Maybe it's a lecture we saw on TV. I doesn't know. It doesn't matter. But the belief has to be real for you. And like you said, Taff, If not, what we've seen happen is there's a lot of resentment down the line. And when you build your faith upon something that is like a relationship, and that relationship is human and it can fail, it's going to be very difficult to maintain your faith when the relationship has its ups and downs. It's very, very difficult. But I converted before I met Taf. I converted as a single woman, and I studied for over a year, and I didn't even think about marriage for a while. But for me, that was very different. And I started meeting a lot of people who were converting for marriage. And sometimes it works, but when the heart's not in it, resentment can build and people do fall away from the faith. So it's very important. This is a very important topic.
I think what you've said about your faith journey is your own. This is incredibly important. And I know, like, for myself, not that it's going to happen, but if somebody were to say, oh, I want to get married to you, and so I'm going to convert to Islam, I wouldn't want that for myself, because I can't trust myself not to convey Islam to that person in a way that is convenient for me, if you get what I mean. I can't, especially if they're saying, you know, oh, well, you've been Muslim for years and you can teach me. No. Number one, I'm not qualified to teach anybody anything. But also number two, because I can't trust myself not to be slightly manipulative in that situation. And I think everybody sort of should reflect on that. And I think we see this happen a lot. I see a lot of sisters, especially, who, you know, oh, my husband's going to teach me Islam, and their husband teaches them this weird version of, I don't know what it is, but I can't call it Islam. And they're coming to the mosque, and finally, you know, after years of marriage and a couple of children, they're coming to the mosque and saying, well, my husband taught me X, Y, Z. And the sisters running the halaqah are thinking, well, he's made that up to keep you a certain way. And it's a danger. And you know, and this can happen. The best of people with the best of intentions can fall into this trap of doing this to their spouse when they're burdened with that responsibility of teaching them, and they want to teach them, but they also want them to behave the way they want them to behave. And I think that that's something that, if you are considering marrying somebody who is Muslim, if you're already in that relationship, and you know, absolutely zero judgment on being in that situation, but if you're already in that relationship, go and explore Islam away from them and see if it is truly what you believe it is, to see if it is truly what they're representing it as. And if it is, and it still aligns with you and with your values, with your heart, then okay, yeah, go for it, of course. But if you're just doing it based on what they've told you it is, you know, at the end of the day, we all have biases, and confirmation bias can happen even when we're telling other people about our religion, subhanAllah. So these are all really, really important things to think about. And that brings us to the next topic, which is about the spiritual shifts and growth. And we all, whether we're from Muslim families or not, everybody goes through spiritual shifts and spiritual growth and spiritual shrinkage as well, if that's the right term for the opposite of growth. But I think especially as converts, we do have the potential to go through huge changes spiritually in short spans of time. If, you know, whether we've come to Islam after years of looking into it, or taken the Shahada as a sort of an uninformed response to a spiritual experience, and then we start learning, either way, we are very likely to go through huge shifts and huge changes. And as couples, we do need to learn how to navigate this, which is why I'm veering off script slightly here, but this is why I always say to people, if you've converted to Islam, don't look to get married just yet. Figure out who you are first. And, you know, like you did, Victoria, mashallah. As you said, you know, you converted as a single person. I was the same, converted single, had a few years of figuring it out, but not everybody's in that situation. And even years later, you can have spiritual growth or changes. How can this be navigated? And I would say, how can, and maybe this is a question more for Taf, how can the born Muslim, heritage Muslim part of the couple navigate this when they see this in their convert spouse, having a massive shift that wasn't anticipated?
That's a very powerful question. Wasn't expecting that, Amanda, mashallah. I would say that the spiritual real estate that we all have should always be increasing. So if my idea is that my real estate is full and I have spiritually found the ultimate and I've reached my threshold, then that's my demise. So every single human being, no matter if they're heritage Muslim or new Muslims, needs to always be working towards that purification, self-purification that Allah talks about in the Quran. You know, Qad aflaha man tazakka, you know, truly he succeeds who purifies himself. So we always should be in a state of self-purification. For lifelong Muslims, there's an opportunity to learn contrary to what the belief is. And the learning is that someone who's come fresh into this faith, who's seeing the faith through a fresh pair of eyes, and maybe things that I forgot about, the simple 5 pillars of Islam that I maybe took for granted, are being revisited. And I think the reality is that no matter who we are, how much we know, there's always something to learn. So for the born Muslims like myself, and the case was here with Victoria, is number one is that I didn't assume anything about her journey. It's her journey. I always say everyone's spiritual journey is a very sacred, personal journey. Everyone is on their path to Allah, and it's very sacred, it's very unique, and it's their journey. And in some ways, she taught me that it was her journey, and she had her own time frame into reaching her destination.
Maybe you should share the analogy of the 2 cars on the motorway. I really like that one.
Okay, so we always say that, the motorway is our faith, Islam itself, and where we have to be on the same motorway spiritually, traveling in the same direction, not opposite directions. And preferably, we should be sat in the same car as well, ideally. But the truth is, sometimes born Muslims may be a few cars ahead from somebody who's just embraced the faith. But not always. It could be that the person who's just embraced the faith actually is like 10 cars ahead, and I'm playing catch up. So the key is to know where we are on that motorway and how to honor the other person's journey, not to judge. Every one of us is trying to have this nearness to Allah, to God, to have that proximity, to have what we call taqwa, God consciousness. And everyone's God consciousness is at-taqwa ahuna, like the Prophet ﷺ said, Sheikh Bilal, taqwa is in here. We don't know who has more taqwa. Victoria may have more than I, and who knows? We don't know this. So with that in mind, we have to understand that proximity to Allah is a very personal matter, and we don't know anyone's nearness or otherwise. And therefore, that really humbles us as human beings, that I'm on this journey to really get closer to Allah in a way that I know, and so is this person. And if we can work this out together, meaning I respect her and she respects me, then alhamdulillah, we have a beautiful combination there that really could work well for both of us.
Because sometimes the car breaks down on the motorway, or we take a wrong turn, and we need that person to be there to, come change the tire, come pick us up. And like we were speaking earlier, it's about not just where we're going, but how are we getting there? And how it doesn't have to be identical. It just has to be compatible. I can't stop him on his journey to faith, and he can't stop me in my journey to faith. We've got to support each other in the best way possible. And, we've worked with so many couples from so many different walks of life. I can tell you this after years of doing this work, that couples who are struggling in marriage, inevitably 100% of them were spiritually misaligned. They weren't praying together. They weren't talking about faith together. They were not supporting each other. I don't care if it's to heritage Muslims, to convert Muslims. It doesn't matter. It is a symptom of every marriage that is not functioning. They were spiritually misaligned. So it's a really important topic to have this conversation before you're married, and continually, even us now, we have this conversation. We always talk about how can we up-level our game, in faith. And I remember when we were in the very beginning of our marriage, we used to have this thing called Tafsir Tuesdays, where we'd read a verse from the Quran and we'd read the tafsir together, and then we just talk about it. And you can be so creative in how you are coming to the faith and how you're sharing it, but you have to have these conversations. And we actually created something called these beautiful conversation cards. They're called Soulful Connections, because they're conversation starters for couples to just literally ask a question and just talk about it and bring them closer together. And we were doing them during Ramadan, and sometimes after Fajr, we would just literally talk for 2 hours after one question. But it's important that you're doing this. It's very important.
Yeah, it's a very beautiful and useful analogy. I've heard it before from you guys. One of the things that I always say is that, your spouse has their own destiny. So you have your own destiny. You're going to meet Allah. You're going to go to your grave alone. You're going to be asked alone. And so is your spouse. They're going to have their own destiny anyway. So, trying to shape them into the spiritual spouse that you want them to be, there's no point in even doing that. because everybody's on their own journey back to Allah.
Conversely, as well, trying to shape yourself into somebody more like your spouse for the sake of trying to become more compatible with your spouse is equally problematic, because then you're not doing it for Allah, are you? You're doing it for your spouse. And if it's not for Allah, what is it? That is potentially a very dangerous thing to do for yourself spiritually. It has to be for Allah's sake, or it's not, shouldn't be something we do, really. Could we ask more about the spiritual blueprint? You've mentioned it a couple of times. You've mentioned it earlier, and we have it here in our notes as well. What is it, and how can couples use it?
So it's really a beautiful thing that we developed after doing this work for so long. And many years ago, when we started working with New Beginnings, we did a marriage course. And when Tav and I were speaking, we realized that being a convert and a heritage Muslim couple, that we had to create a framework and understanding of where are we on this journey. And so we created the spiritual blueprint, and it's a personal framework that guides someone's spiritual growth and development. And it's used to make those meaningful decisions. And it has 3 aspects to it. It helps you determine where you came from spiritually, which is really important. We call it the family of origin. And it's 2 different axes you look at. We look at your knowledge and understanding when it comes to religion, no matter what faith it was, and your flexibility and open-mindedness when it comes to religion and spirituality. And just understanding where it's not about a judgment, just where did you come from? It's just so you're able to communicate it, because it's really important to know who you're marrying. What are they bringing with them? Those seeds that were planted in them. And the second thing is to understand, where are you right now in your journey? Because we're all growing and developing, and we may not be exactly where we want to be, but it's important to also communicate that. When I married Taf, I wasn't wearing the hijab, and I was really open with him. And I said, look, I need this to be my journey on my time, and I need you to be okay with that. I can't feel that pressure from you. And is this something you can do? And he said, absolutely. And so I had to be really clear with that with him. And the third part of the blueprint is probably my favorite. And it's about where you want to be and how you want to get there. So it's your spiritual learning style, your goals. And it's more than just, as Muslims, we all want to make it to Jannah, which is this, beautiful place that inshallah will all be granted. And how we get there looks very different for all of us. Like I was saying earlier, some of us learn very differently. Some of us are seeking faith very differently. Some of us like to be taught. Some of us like to self-teach. And so it's about really pinning that down so then I can ask the right questions to who I'm considering for marriage. Because believe me, if you hate being taught to, and you marry someone who's, I'm going to teach you everything, I'm going to put you under my wing, and you're going to be my prodigy, my student, there's going to be a lot of marital distress and a lot of resentment that comes up there. Sometimes I even have to poke my husband a little more. I go, teach me more, teach me more. And he goes, okay, I didn't know. You want to know? I'll help you. I'll share what I know. So this is really beautiful in order to really come together as a couple and become spiritually aligned. That's what the spiritual blueprint is. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we summarize it like, we have an understanding of the baseline, where we come from. That creates an understanding, which inshallah creates a better connection between you two. And ultimately, that's what it is, about connecting two spirits, two human beings that understand where they've come from and where they are on that journey. So the looking forward from here on out is more connected and you're informed in terms of where this person is and how they want to live that journey the rest of their life, inshallah.
This sounds like an ideal tool, not just for already married couples, but for couples who are courting. And I love that. I love that expression. I think we need to bring that expression back. But couples who are in the courting phases, to get to know each other better. Is that why you designed it, or did you design it more for couples who are already married?
No, we designed it for people who are preparing for marriage. The self-reflective tool, you fill it out yourself, and then it allows you to develop really intentional, powerful questions and observations to make so that you are marrying someone because we know, like we said earlier, that one of the foundational pieces of a successful marriage is an aligned faith. If you have this down, I'm telling you, you are on a journey to have success in your marriage, because it's absolutely essential to having an incredible relationship.
So in relation to these clashes that happen in relationships, what do we do when things are not working out? When is it time to call it quits? We're not talking about situations of, abuse here obviously you need to seek professional advice for that. But what do we do when things aren't working out? I think Gottman, he mentions the 4 horsemen of divorce. So maybe you can touch on those as well.
Not every hardship in relationship is a sign to walk away. This is so important. Sometimes it's a sign to go deeper in yourself, in your communication, in your faith. And one of the things, in the work we do with couples, Muslim couples, is that people are coming to us when they've already been in the depths of despair for a couple of years. And we do know this faith is so beautiful. It teaches us to seek mediation and help right away. This is not about staying in a situation that is unhappy and healthy for you. It's about seeking help, and people are not seeking help. This is very important. You cannot do this alone. We always say, don't react. When you react based on anger, hurt, pain, it's never usually going to be the best decision moving forward. So we have a lot of people that we work with that are struggling in their relationship, but also people who have come out of it and are repairing from it. And what we can say is that a lot of the times they just didn't, most of these people who have left marriage already and are divorced, they never actually sought help. I would say the majority of them never did. They just try to handle it, what we call in-house,
Yeah.
DIY.
I mean, if we look at things generally speaking, when we're ill, we go to a doctor, the person who knows what to give you, medication, a professor or someone of knowledge, Sheikh Bilal like yourself, who understands fiqh and gives you that understanding of what to do, what not to do. Or a mechanic when your car's broken down, but when your marriage breaks down, it's just a totally different thing. And it's just so sad to see so many couples who may just ask a friend or phone a friend, ask
Phone an auntie.
an auntie, yeah, or someone who has perhaps no idea about marriage, maybe have vested interests in something. So the key for us is that we say go to someone who knows what they're talking about in the first place, because oftentimes when you're in the thick of it, you can't see the wood for the trees, you can't see the details. We've had couples that within just one session, 30, 40 minutes into it, we can see exactly what's going on. Because they're in it, they can't see what's going on, but we can say, oh my God, it's just like almost like textbook, like, signs and symptoms that are really rolling out in front of our eyes. So we can see all that stuff quite clearly. So go to someone who knows what they're doing, because 69% of the problems you've got here with this person, it's going to be different with another person. Let's just look at, what's really going on for you as a couple before you say it's over. Exhaust all means possible. So mediation is what we're told first. And mediation with people who understand this thing, people who have a sincerity about them, for this relationship, not vested interests. And the thing to do after that is really make an informed decision. Don't make any decisions when you're emotional. We often find that people who are in the thick of emotions make a decision that they regret later on. Have this time to go back, reflect. There's no rush. There's no race that's on. Find out the information. Make a judgment based upon what's going on, why those circumstances are present, what can you do differently, what can the other person do differently, are you willing to make a different decision based on those things you've found out, try it out, and if it's not going to work out, it's not going to work out. But please exhaust all means possible.
We always say the amount of work you do to get into marriage, you should be doing equal or more so to get out of it. It shouldn't be a quick decision that you just made over a cup of coffee or a cup of tea. And I think, Sheikh Bilal, you said something about the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These are the Gottman Institute, after doing over 40 years of research and looking at couples from all walks of life, have found these 4 terrible things that happen in relationships that are struggling. And the 4 horsemen are, the first one is criticism, and that is verbally attacking personality or character of someone. The second is contempt, and that's attacking the sense of self with an intent to insult or abuse someone. The third is defensiveness, and we probably see this one a lot. It's victimizing yourself, and to a perceived attack is coming and you reverse the blame. It's all about you. And the last one is, we probably won't think this is, but it's a predicator of divorce, is stonewalling. And that's withdrawing to avoid conflict and keeping your distance from someone. What we do know is that conflict can actually bring connection if you fight right. And so a couple that has arguments or has conflict, it doesn't necessarily mean you're doomed. It's the end. But if these 4 horsemen are present in your relationship and they're consistently there all the time, it's a predictor of, unfortunately, divorce. You have to work on weeding these things out and having a lot less of them show up in your conflicts and conversations.
And it does need real effort. So for someone who's used to criticizing, they have to just really work at it so hard and stop doing that. So contempt is a big one where someone begins to insult. So it's their character. And when you go down that route, you know, it becomes really difficult to come back from.
Well, all these four horsemen have antidotes. So if you tend to be a very critical person, the antidote to that is to have what we call a gentle startup. So that is talking about your feelings with I statements and expressing a positive need instead of you never do the dishes. That's a really negative. Coming in saying, I'm really tired tonight, but I would love it if you'd help me clean the kitchen. It'd be so amazing. It's a positive expression. You can ask for the same thing in a completely different way. So there's antidotes to all these things. And we work with couples on what we call relationship literacy. We're never taught these things. And so it's really important to learn them.
Yeah, it's very important, especially if somebody has learnt their relationship literacy from their own experiences and that they're just mimicking that in their own relationships. So I think that's quite useful.
I really appreciate what you both said too about seeking advice from those who know what they're talking about, seeking advice from people who are qualified to give that advice. Because what we see a lot in communities is either one of two things, like you said, ask the aunties or don't ask anyone at all. And seeking mediation with our relationship difficulties is something that Allah tells us to do in the Quran when he says, if you fear a breach, not if they're about to divorce, if you are afraid that there may be problems, get somebody to arbitrate for each side, get two people between them to help, you know. So it's part of our faith to have this. It's a Quranic advice to go and seek this out. And yet my own personal experience with marriage has been, I've been married twice before, both times to people who were very hesitant to let anybody know about any problems because you don't want to air your dirty laundry, the what will people think kind of thing. And in some cases that can be because they are wanting to hide what it is that is happening. You know, they don't want to admit what is happening and they want to hide it. But other times it's a very deep-rooted cultural mindset of what will people say. You know, never mind what Allah says to do in the Quran, what will people say if we go and do this, which is a big problem. But then I think also for the convert side of the partnership, and I'm saying this from personal experience, there's the shame in feeling that you failed. If you're having problems in the marriage and, you know, does it reflect on me as a Muslim? Am I not a good enough Muslim? And if I go and seek support from somebody, will that person judge me for being a bad Muslim, so to speak, because I'm not doing enough, because I'm not a good enough wife or husband, and so on. And I think that this, you know, we need to weed out this type of thinking. Obviously, services such as T4Two are confidential, are private. You know, anybody who you do go and speak to should be able to guarantee that confidentiality as well. So there's no fear of what will people think, because these aren't people, these are professionals. If people need your services, they can get in touch with you online. Do you offer online counseling? Or is it purely that they have to go and see you and sit with you physically?
Amanda, we have worked with couples, I think we've mentioned earlier, from over 11 different countries. And we specifically even keep weekends open because of the time zone differences, because we're located in England. And it's been an incredible journey to be able to work with couples online, because we're living in a world where the resources are just in abundance. It's incredible. And, you know, I wanted to speak on what you just said a few minutes ago. It's really important to know that what you don't repair, you will repeat. We've seen it so many times. So don't think ending a relationship is going to fix everything and the next one will be great. It'll be fine. Yeah, there probably is some, you know, you could make some better choices about who you're more compatible with, of course. But a lot of those issues are going to still rear their ugly head. So you've got to learn how to deal with it. And if you don't know, you have to go find someone. So yes, we do meet with couples online and virtually. We have met with couples in person as well, if they're in the England, you know, area. We're in Bradford, so this up north, as people call it. And it's really accessible. And we don't want people, we've worked with couples who have come out of the marriage and they have children. And we actually have created a program called Leave Them in Kindness, based on the Islamic principle that we should end with ihsan and grace and dignity. If things aren't working out, It's not about ego. It's just closure, clarity, gratitude, supporting the children moving forward. So there isn't this harsh war happening. Because I can tell you, especially if there's children involved, that you'll be inevitably connected to that person for the rest of your life. So you have to learn how to handle it with dignity. And so we really support couples that are coming out of a relationship as well, and to do some of that healing work so they aren't repeating what they haven't repaired.
Yeah, and just to add for those that don't know, we both have come from divorced families. So we've grown up as children that we saw our parents divorced. And eventually what happened was, we got divorced from our previous spouses, and therefore we raised children who were children of divorced families. So it's almost like we have the full circle of understanding of being a child and also being an adult. And I will say personally that, the fallout of divorce leaves its marks on you for life. And oftentimes, my own story was that my childhood trauma of abandonment showed up in both my previous marriages. And it wasn't until my second divorce, and looking at, what you don't repair is repeated, I had to do the work. I had to understand what was going on and why it was going on. And so I won't repeat it again. And I think the weight of that is so heavy on an individual if they don't do the repair work, because unfortunately what will happen is it will just stay with you and show up in oftentimes places where you don't expect it to show up. And that's the hardest thing, when you really want to connect with somebody but you have something within you that's literally sabotaging your relationship, and we don't want that for anybody.
You've touched on something really, really important here about sometimes marriages do end, and how to end them in the best manner possible. We see this a lot when you're getting married. People say, pray istikhara, pray, make the dua, make the prayer for seeking guidance in your decision. And that'll set you on the right path as to whether this is the right person to marry or not. That doesn't guarantee the marriage will succeed. All that guarantees is that the marriage will in some shape or form be good for your journey to Allah, right? And that could include a divorce, or 2 divorces, or 3 divorces. Who knows? Only Allah knows what's written for you. So we should be able to take the good even out of divorce. I do believe firmly that the shame around divorce is a post-colonial issue. I do, when you look at Islamic history and you see how people, not to say that we should be easy about divorce, but that there shouldn't be a shame in it. There shouldn't be a stigma to it. But as you said, Brother Taft, it should be learned from. And it should be healed from before we go into the next one. And we do see this happen a lot. People almost jumping from one marriage to another. Well, I'm done with that. I just finished. The waiting period's finished. 3 months done. Who's the next husband kind of thing? Who's the next wife? Or sometimes even, and this is a whole other topic, but brothers saying, that their first wife's waiting period isn't even finished and they're already married the second one. So effectively, de facto, marrying 2 wives at one time because the other one isn't fully divorced yet, and so on. And this is obviously very, very problematic. But when you say about ending marriage in a good way, ending it with kindness, what kind of things, practically speaking, what kind of things are we talking about? Because at the end of the day, this must be very hard. You don't leave a marriage when you're happy with the person. So it must be very, very hard to leave them with kindness. How can we ensure that we do this?
One of the things that's really important, because especially when you have children, so we're going to speak in that context in a relationship, because if there's no children, it's easier to cut ties. You're doing a lot more of your own emotional healing inside. But when there's children, you're constantly going to be re-exposed to this person all the time. And we both know this because we have 8 children between us. And the first thing is about creating some rules of engagement. How are we going to connect, speak, communicate? Those are boundaries. They're very important. The rules of communication are very important. The second thing is, what are we going to agree on when it comes to the children, and how is that going to look and manifest? And when we do have a problem, who are we going to as our mediator? Because it didn't work out when you were married. Don't expect it to change when you now are divorced. The same inability to communicate and have resolution is probably not going to magically appear after divorce. I'm going to tell you. You got to have somebody else there that's going to be that person that's really supporting you. And this is so, so important. One of the most beautiful things, you said something really beautiful, Amanda, and sometimes divorce happens to the best of us, but there is gifts that come out of it. And the gifts that can come out of it, you may not know for a long time. And for Taff and I and our children, and we know this because they've come to us and they're in their 30s, they're all adults now. This is the first time our children in their lifetimes have witnessed a healthy relationship. They have never witnessed it before, Taff and I. And what a gift to come into our lives now at this point, and for them to have this awareness, because sometimes we never get it. We never see it happen. We don't see healthy relationships modeled, real healthy relationships modeled. It's Bollywood, Hollywood, and a lot of the Muslim couples out there, they're hiding. We don't, either they're blasting everything online that's a little too fake, or they're just hiding. They're not sharing for fear of, maybe people infiltrating in their life. I get that. But if we don't see it modeled, how are we teaching our children? So sometimes divorce will give you an opportunity, when we're looking at getting remarried, to bring someone else into your life that may be just what your child needs to see witnessed. And that's okay. It's beautiful. Taff will never be my children's biological father, but in many ways, he is a role model, and they get to learn from him. And same with me. I'm never going to be his children's biological mother, but I have a great opportunity to be a woman of faith, to be an example to them, and to show them what healthy relationship looks like. There's a lot of beautiful opportunity there.
No, absolutely. One thing I want to really emphasize is that when someone does end up being divorced, is to not see divorce as a failure, a personal failure. It was the case with me, and I said to a brother once, I said, look, I can't do marriage. 2 marriages, I failed. It's not going to happen. And he stopped. He goes, no. He said, the marriage failed. You didn't fail. And I went, oh, I get it. It was 2 people that couldn't work things out, and the thing failed, not me. So I think if that's really taken as self-care is really important when it comes to a point when things don't work out, because we can get into a game of self-blame, and self-blame can actually just manifest itself in different ways. Poor health, maybe sleeping habits are, affected.
People stop praying.
Yeah, people stop praying. Yes, we've heard that as well. And so many things can come out of this. But really what we say is that divorce is something that's allowed in our faith. If you exhausted all means possible and divorce happens, it happens. Divorce itself can be almost like a divine redirection for you, if you can see it that way. Okay? So press the reset button, do the repair work so you can recalibrate, inshallah, so you don't repeat things. And Bismillah, again, do the istikhara, do all that you need to do to, enjoy life, because divorce isn't the end. And unfortunately, sometimes it becomes the end because we've built a whole life around a person and maybe a few people, and it suddenly changes. Absolutely, that's going to affect you in some way. But do take the time to replenish, to rejuvenate, and reclaim yourself. We use that word quite a lot. We have been in the last few days reclaiming ourselves and making sure that, we can begin again on this journey towards, and this path towards Allah himself, because marriage is completely half our deen, and it's going to test us in ways that we've never been tested before. And our spouses could be the brightest mirror ever available to us in our lives, so they expose things that, even we don't know of or are aware of. So it's going to happen that we're going to be facing things that we never faced before. We're going to be tested beyond anything else. We're going to be challenged personally. We're going to have to navigate those ego trips and those, really difficult temptations and all sorts of things. But, once something doesn't work out and you're at the other end, do take some time out for yourselves. And like you said, Victoria, have someone in your corner, even if it's a close friend, somebody who's in your corner who can support you and pick you back up when you're not feeling, the best.
And know that the best is yet to come. We have to remain hopeful. The best is yet to come, no matter what age you are. I mean, we're grandparents. And this is, if someone would have told me before I became Muslim that in less than a decade, Victoria, you will be a Muslim and you will be guiding other Muslims to heal their hearts and have incredible marriages, I would have said, what are you talking about? I have no idea. Allah is writing your story. You have to allow that to happen. And sometimes some chapters are difficult. And that's okay. But the ending, inshallah, will be beautiful.
I think we can call this a beautiful ending as well. Thank you both for your time and your beneficial insights. We could go on for a few hours more, I think, about this topic. If anybody listening would like to know more about the issues we've discussed, please do get in touch with us. You can message us on social media, on Instagram, on X, even on TikTok, you can message us there, or you can email us at unplugged@beginnings.org.uk, unplugged@beginnings.org.uk.
And just in closing, if anybody wants to get in touch with Victoria or Taff at Tea for Two, how can they do that?
You can find us online at www.tea, and that's the tea you drink, TEA. And that comes from our very first meeting, 48 hours before Nikah. We had tea together, Tea for Two in England, T42, TWO.UK. Or we are on social media. We're on Instagram at Tea for Two Muslim Love. I am on there as Muslim Love Coach, and Taff is on there as Coach Taff. Yeah, we're on there. We're on Facebook. We're everywhere. So find us, connect with us, drop us a DM if you have a question. We have really spent a lot of years perfecting this work, and we've created an amazing program for Muslim couples called Thrive. And it's really a bespoke program. It's not a cut. It's cut something from all the work we've done. And so we really work with couples to really create an amazing marriage. Or if you're preparing for marriage, we also work with couples.
Amazing. Thank you so much both for coming on and sharing your experiences, your wisdom, your expertise with us as well. It's been really fascinating, and I can see how your work is benefiting people and has the potential to benefit many others. So may Allah reward you for that.
Amen.
That's it for another episode of the New Beginnings podcast. We do hope you enjoyed this episode. Please share on social media and with family and friends.
Yes, please do share and subscribe. We're on all major podcast platforms. Inshallah, we'll see you next time.
I look forward to it. But for now, thank you for listening.
Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.